don't really have a title for this message. And there's no one good title for it. So I'm not going to try to title it. I'm going to start in Exodus 33:19. And it's that's where God and Moses are having a conversation. Exodus 33:19. It's a pretty cool conversation. And in verse 18, that's where Moses asked the Lord to please show me your glory. And then the Lord tells him, it says, then he said, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious. And I think some versions there, and when it mentions it in the New Testament, it may use mercy in that place, but it says, I'll be gracious to whom I'll be gracious, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion, which I know compassion and mercy like greatly overlap. A lot of times mercy means having compassion. Mm-hmm. You know, it'd be like, Jesus he accomplished mercy being moved by compassion. I guess it'd be a good way to say it. Keep losing my spot here. I have compassion on whom I have compassion. Then it goes on to say, you cannot see my face, no man shall see my face and live. And the Lord said, here's a place by me, and you shall stand on the rock, and it shall be, while my glory passes by, that I will put you in the cleft of the rock, and will cover you with my hand while I pass by. Then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face you shall not see. I just read that part because I love it. It's not even part of the message, but I just wonder what his back looked like if it already had stripes on it. All right, I'm gonna go from there to where the New Testament mentions that. One of the places it actually mentions it. I think it mentions another one, but I'm gonna go to Romans chapter 9, verse 15. Romans 9:15. And I want to mention something that just came to mind. Now, if you had a group of, if you're dog fans or cat fans or duck fans, whatever kind of animal, if you had a group of, we won't use cats because they're just not, I'm kidding, I'm totally kidding. Whatever group of animals you like there. Now, say you had a group of those animals and you were going to pick one of them, and there was one in the group that just looked hideous. I'm telling you, it was just ugly. Even a kitten or a puppy. It's just, man, that's an ugly kitten or puppy. I mean, this is like, no. But what if all the other ones turned and walked away from you, and he just come and just laid against you, and you put it over there and like, go on, you ugly little thing. And he just come and just put his head on you, licked you, and just looked at you with a little puppy or kitty eyes. Even though it was ugly, what would be your heart for that little thing? You wouldn't just be, oh, you nasty thing, go on. You'd have compassion. You'd feel something for the little animal just because it loves you so much and because it's persistent, right? That's what you keep that in mind as I go, as I read this next one. It's Romans 9:15. It says, for he says to Moses, I will have mercy See, it said, I'll be gracious in the Old Testament, right? I will have mercy on whomever I will have mercy, and compassion on whomever I'll have compassion. And there's a difference in the Greek and the Hebrew on the same word. Compassion in Greek is not the same compassion word they used in the Hebrew. Like mercy, if you look up mercy in the Old and New, let me see, the Old Testament means, and there's one word it uses in here that I hate it, but people associate that word only badly now. Fondle. I mean, people are like, ew, somebody fondled somebody. Well, it's a good thing when the Lord wants to fondle. He's caressing you, fondling you, he's making contact with you. But that's one of the words for mercy. Well, let me be sure I'm getting. Yeah, mercy, to fondle, to love, to show mercy, to have compassion is the Old Testament version. And that gracious that it used in the Old Testament, it means to bend or stoop in kindness to an inferior. In other words, that little ugly puppy or kitten, he's there and he's worshiping you, because that's a definition of worship, is a dog licking its owner's hand. That's worship. He's adoring you, which is how we worship. Your heart's going to move toward that little thing, that little critter. And I know it's hard to believe a kitten being ugly, but there's some ugly dog breed. Well, actually, I'm sorry, people. There's some ugly cat and dogs now. People done bred them so much. There's some ugly ones. I mean, there's some little Yoda-looking cats out there now. But I'll stop. I don't want to offend anybody.
They're beautiful on the inside.
That's something.
You done.
Yeah, I done messed it up. I know.
We're glad you're talking
Yoda's
about
cute.
animals.
Yoda's cute. I like Yoda. I didn't say I didn't like him. All right. All right, we have the word mercy in the New Testament. It means compassionate by word or deed, especially by divine grace. That's what that word means when you look it up in the New, when it quotes that same verse that God spoke to Moses. And of course, compassion in the Greek means to exercise pity. You know, people say, I don't want pity. You don't want the nature of God favoring you then. I mean, you can not want pity if you want, but God, pity me all you want to. I will take it. To exercise pity or have compassion on. That's compassion. Jesus was moved with pity, you could almost say, because that's one of the definitions. That's right there hand in hand with compassion. So don't let pride rob you of God moving in your life. You can say you don't want pity, but I want anything God has for me, and I don't need any pride in my life, because it's enough of a problem what I have. It causes problems wherever you go. I find that, I'll think I'm doing all right. Pride-wise, and then something come up, I'm like, oh Lord, please save me. Nice to meet you, Jesus. I'm Jeff. Come into my life. I mean, it'll wake you up sometimes. And I'm going on a totally new direction now, but that's Moses that wrote and spoke Exodus 33:19. And then he's also the one that wrote Psalms 91. Right? He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He's my refuge, my fortress, my God, in Him I will trust. And it goes on to talk about no pestilence will come near your dwelling. None of these things will harm you. He'll give His angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they'll bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. It says, because He set His love upon me. God's talking about this man that loves God. And He says, because He set His love upon me, I will deliver him. I'll set him on high because he has known my name. He shall call upon me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him, right? Moses died by the hand of God on a mountain. Prophets are servants of God that abide with God, that dwell in the secret place of the Most High. I remember a certain prophet named Elijah saying, God, I'm the only prophet left out of all of them because Jezebel has killed them all. And he said, no, I've saved 7,000. How many prophets were there that died, though? That's God's people. You know, I mentioned Saul last week where he disobeyed. I think it was last week. In the last couple of weeks, where he disobeyed. And God said, well, kingdom's not yours anymore. And he disobeyed. What really got him in trouble was he was supposed to go in and kill this king and everybody that had anything to do with his people, even the goats and the critters, even cats, if they had them. And I figured I'd wake you up. I'm having fun at the expense of my wife this morning. Sorry. Anyway. He disobeyed that. And then David was anointed king a little while after. And you know, right after he disobeyed, Samuel says something that lets you know what his problem was. The reason he sacrificed to God when he wasn't supposed to, and he did his own thing, it says when you were small or when you were little in your own sight. In other words, when you were humble, did not God give you the kingdom or bestow on you the kingdom? In other words, you're prideful. I'm going to read the scripture I think I'm out of order here. It's 1 Samuel 15:17, I believe. 1 Samuel 15:17. I just got this stuff and kind of wrote it down this morning without any explanations, so I'm just trying to remember. Yeah, this is the one. It says, so Samuel said, when you were little in your own eyes, were you not head of the tribes of Israel? Did not the Lord anoint you king over Israel? Now the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? All right. So he was supposed to do all that there, right? And Saul kept on in pride. He never repented of his pride. When God said what he said, he stayed in pride. One thing that lets me know that is if God's not speaking to you and you decide to go your own way and hear God's voice anyway, what is that? That's pride, right? That's I'm going to do it with or without you, God. I'm going to talk to you whether you're talking to me or not. Basically. And so what does he do? Poor dead Samuel. He goes to a medium. It says Samuel came forth and said, why are you bothering me? And then he heard some news he didn't want to hear because he did that. But that's pride that's fueling that. That is demonic. That's the same thing that made Satan fall, made Saul fall. And you know what he did after a little while? King David was brought into the good graces of Saul there, and he loved him at first until he heard a girl sing a song about David that he killed more than Saul did. Pride made him not like David did. And then a little bit later, he gets turned more and more against David. And David flees and runs from Saul. And he ends up going to this, several places hiding, but he ends up finally going to this priest. And the priest gives him showbread for his men and for himself. And Goliath's sword. Well, you know what Saul did? He did the exact thing for Satan that he was supposed to do for God. After he found out that priest gave him a sword and some bread and sent him away, he went in and killed his whole family. He killed 85 priests right there on the spot. He said he commanded his men, he said, kill them. And they said, nope. They disobeyed a direct order of the king, and he's still hard-headed and prideful. Took the man that spied out David and told on him and said, well, you kill them. And he killed 85 men right there. And it said he went to the city of Nob and killed everybody in it. Men, women, children, animals, everything. He obeyed God. He obeyed what God said, but for the devil. He did everything God told him to do against God. That's where pride can get you. That's why it says God resists the proud, gives grace to the humble. That's why it's such a thing that we need. You know, he says in the New Testament, I didn't write these down, I'm sorry, this is coming. But, you know, he tells us in the New Testament to look at yourself. You know, see where you're at. Show yourself you know, all these things about yourself. You're supposed to get in the Word and become the Word and do what the Word says and search yourself. If there's anything in you that's not supposed to be there, get rid of it. And if you say, well, I can't, well, say, Lord, get rid of it. And if you mean it, say, Lord, whatever it costs, get it out of me. I don't want it if it's not you. There's nothing more, there's no cost too great for you, Jesus. There's no cost too great. Whatever, well, I need to get that off. Whatever the cost, it don't matter. None of it compares. And some people have trouble interpreting that. Well, he says in Psalm 91, none of this stuff's going to come after you, but yet the one that wrote it died on the mountain. He was perfectly healthy and, you know, and then all these prophets died. And then you see the apostles, all but one, killed. All of them I know of died except for one. And not in a good way, not naturally. All these things happen to these people, and so people have trouble reconciling. Well, if he's so good and he says these things, how did that happen? Well, for one, it's above my pay grade to fully explain it. But what I do know, the Bible tells us some of those things. Matthew 23:34. This is Jesus talking. Matthew chapter 23, verse 34. It says, therefore, indeed, I send you prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city. And of course, we know Saul was one of those that did that. And we read about Saul, right? And how much stuff he did, but how many others did that? I mean, he's just the one that God ended up turning around to use. How many others were there? There's no telling how many others. They had to hide in little house churches everywhere just to survive. And they were persecuted and all these things. And I bet, how many of them are reading Psalm 91 and saying, well, God, you're not telling the truth? No, they understood something. These people willingly laid down their lives. You look at before Jesus even showed up, as far as on the cross, you look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel, any of those folks, they saw the big picture. Man, Daniel saw Revelation. That's the last book of the Bible. He saw it almost exactly the same as John, the Revelator, the one who Jesus loved. You know why he saw it? Because he was one of the most humble people you'll read about. The most humble thing you can do is if somebody says, I am going to shoot you in the head if you get on your knees and say, Jesus is Lord. The most humble thing you can do is get on your knees and say, Jesus is Lord, right there. That's the most humble thing you can do. All right, I done lost where I was going here. Okay. So Jesus is telling them all these things are going to happen, and that they're going to kill him. But then I want to go to Hebrews chapter 11, about verse 30. Hebrews 11:30. This is the faith chapter of Hebrews. I love chapter 11 of Hebrews. And I know this don't seem right in a second, but you're going to see in a second after I read. I'm going to read several verses. I'm probably going to read about 9 verses. It says, by faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were encircled for 7 days. By faith, the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies with peace. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, also David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire. There's Shadrach, Daniel, it's mentioned all these guys. Escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle. Well, that's Gideon. Turned to flight the armies of aliens. Women received their dead raised alive. That's that woman whose son died that was prophesied to have a son, right? And then it says, here's where it gets to it. This is what we need to see. This is what somebody that's living in the Spirit, convinced and moved by the Spirit of God, not by the world. This is their attitude. It says others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. It says be mindful of things above, not of the things beneath. It says run the race that you may win the prize. If you look at what the Bible points to it don't matter what happens to us in this little minute amount of life that we're here on this planet. What matters is Jesus is Lord, and whatever the cost, I will serve you all my days.
Amen.
And if you find pride rising up in your life, the best thing you can do is expose it and embarrass yourself if you need to. I found myself acting like a jerk the other day, and it just came to me. You know, I was thinking about things where, you know, 2 wrongs don't make a right, right? Well, I did something that offended somebody greatly at me. I don't feel like I just out and out sin, but I feel like I did something that hurt somebody. And I know they were offended at me, and I was like, well, you know, I forgive the offense at me, and I know I provoked things, whether I meant to or not. And so I thought I just had let everything go. Well, the other day I found myself riding down the road, and I was thinking about that. Because it hurts, and you're at a loss. But I was thinking about it, and I didn't realize, but I was getting angry. I was getting angry about that very thing. And some girl comes up, I didn't know if it was a guy or a girl at the time, come up and act like about that guy hit me going to pass me. You know, I took off and just cut them off just because I was that mad. That is ridiculous and unacceptable. That is stupid. That is not an acceptable thing. And I'll gladly expose that I did that just so it embarrasses that sin, so it doesn't rise up again. There's no room for that kind of behavior. I did that the other day and was so ashamed. And realized, oh man, I let something just cause bitterness and just cause anger in me that shouldn't be there. If somebody does something that hurts you, give it to the Lord. Don't hold it and fester it. And I mean, I didn't know I was doing that, but evidently I was. And I'm not going to allow that anymore. I gave it to the Lord, and you know that there's no room for that kind of stuff in my life. There just isn't. I mean, I don't know how many peer preachers you hear talk about a mild case of road rage, but there I was. And I ain't going to deny it. I'd rather be clean before God and admit it and get it out of there. He tells us to confess those things, right? Okay. These people were tortured, it says, not accepting deliverance that they might obtain a better resurrection. And still others had trials of mockings and scourgings, yes, and of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sown in two. They were tempted, slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains and dens and in caves of the earth. All these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise. What's the promise? Jesus. They didn't have them there yet, right? God having provided them better. Well, sorry, brain tied or something here. Having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise, God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. So they had to wait. They had to wait to see it, so that we could be included. And those guys stood by what they were supposed to do, and gladly did what God said. And they fought through things. It seems just amazing to us. See, now even my camera messed up because